Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a really fascinating mission for you today, taking your provided notes on the psychology of memory and uncovering exactly why those crucial details slip your mind. And more importantly, we are going to look at how criminal investigators actively hack the human brain to retrieve lost information.
It is a completely remarkable area of study, honestly,
Yeah.
because we tend to think of human memory as a video recorder, but it's actually highly malleable.
Okay, let's unpack this. Your notes highlight two main culprits for why we forget things. The
Huh.
first is interference theory. So think of this like a mental traffic jam. Sometimes your older memories block new ones from parking in your brain, and that is proactive interference.
Right.
But it also works in reverse, where the new stuff you're learning actively paves over the old stuff, which is retroactive interference. Wait, so you're telling me simply taking in new information literally overwrites our older memories?
What's fascinating here is how researchers proved exactly that in the real world. Back in 1977, Baddeley and Hitch tracked a team of rugby players. They just asked the players to recall the names of the opposing teams they had played that season. And they discovered that players who participated in more games made significantly more errors in recalling the teams,
Even when the
even when the exact same amount of time had passed for everyone. Yeah,
Oh, wow. So it wasn't the calendar making them forget. It was the sheer volume of intervening matches getting in the way.
precisely. And because they studied actual games instead of a sterile lab test, it reflects real life. It's what researchers call high ecological validity. But the trade-off is they couldn't strictly control outside factors or extraneous variables.
Like what they were doing between the matches.
Exactly. They couldn't account for whether some players watched highlight reels on television between games, for instance.
Yeah. Right, right. But interference doesn't explain that classic everyday glitch where you walk into a room and completely forget why you were there, and then you only remember once you walk back into the kitchen. The memory wasn't overwritten by anything, it was just hiding.
That phenomenon perfectly illustrates the second theory from your notes, which is retrieval failure. The argument here is that the memory is perfectly intact and available in your brain. You just cannot access it because you lack the right cue.
A trigger, basically.
Yeah, it relies on Tulving's encoding specificity principle, which basically says your ability to recall something is at its absolute best when the cues present at the time of retrieval match the cues that were present when you encoded the memory.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Researchers Godin and Baddeley actually tested this in 1975 using scuba divers. They had divers learn lists of words either on dry land or underwater, and it turned out the divers recalled those words much better when their learning and testing environments matched perfectly.
So if they learned the words underwater,
They had to be underwater to remember them.
because the physical environment is a massive retrieval cue. And Goodwin's state-dependent research shows that matching your internal physiological state improves recall too. In his research, individuals who learned information while intoxicated actually had better recall when they were intoxicated again compared to when they were perfectly sober.
That is wild. So how do police investigators weaponize this quirk in our biology?
They use something called the cognitive interview for eyewitnesses. Instead of just asking someone to recite what happened, they mentally transport the witness back to the scene. They ask them to recreate the environment and their emotional state.
And they ask the witness to report absolutely every tiny detail right, even if it seems completely irrelevant.
Exactly. Then they shake up the timeline by having the witness reverse the order of events or change their perspective entirely and describe the scene from another person's vantage point.
But taking the time to mentally time travel with every witness sounds like a logistical nightmare. Your notes point out that this process is highly expensive and requires specialized training. Plus, it lacks reliability because different police forces use entirely different versions of the interview, making the data incredibly hard to standardize.
True. But if we connect this to the bigger picture techniques, like changing the perspective or reversing the timeline, actually force the brain to forge new retrieval pathways to find that missing cue. Yes, the initial public spending and training costs are high. However, by retrieving highly accurate details early on, police avoid chasing incorrect leads. It ultimately saves money and time by reducing the need for repeated, drawn-out investigations.
So what does this all mean? To synthesize today's deep dive forgetting is often just a missing mental key. And cognitive techniques prove that those seemingly lost details are still locked safely in your brain, just waiting for the right environmental or emotional trigger to bring them back.
Which leaves you with an important question to ponder. If our ability to retrieve information is so deeply tied to matching our physical environment and physiological state, What does that mean for how we evaluate students in sterile, silent exam halls that look and feel entirely different from where they actually learn the material?